Lovely. So good. I'm going to welcome up our panel. Got my hands full up here. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so glad that y'all are here. Welcome, Faith in Dating, 20s and 30s. Let's go. My name is Kelsey Rutledge, and I'm the young adults pastor at Reach Church. If I haven't met you, hello. And I just want to take a really quick poll in the room before we get started. Raise your hand if you are married or engaged. Love it. Cool. Sick. Raise your hand if you are in a current dating relationship. Awesome. Very fun. Raise your hand if you are single. And all of the single people took note of who raised their hands. So glad that y'all are with us tonight. Tonight is actually our first gathering since last October, which is wild to me, is that we haven't done a panel since last October. We've done outings in November, December, January. We had our retreat in January, which was awesome, but we are getting back into it. And so last summer, we actually sent out a survey to be able to ask you, the people that show up to these events, what do you want to see from our panels? What topics do you want us to cover? And I don't think this comes as a surprise, but y'all requested a relationship series. Probably 95% of you. And so that is a beautiful thing, and we celebrate that, and that's why we are responding in the way that we are. And so we are kicking off February with a relationship series. And so tonight, obviously, we're gonna be talking about faith and dating. Next month in March, we're talking about faith and singleness and contentment. The next month, March, April, we're going to be talking about engagement and marriage. And then in May, we're talking about friendship. So we might keep the party going. We might have a part 2. Who knows? This is the fun thing about 20s, 30s is we have all these plans, but the Lord kind of takes it and kind of does more with it than we would ever do. So that's our plan right now. We'll see if it changes. It's kind of fun. But honestly, let's be real. It is 2024, and we need advice when it comes to dating. There's a lot of advice out there. Not all of it is good, right? And so we want to be really discerning about the voices that we're listening to and the advice that we're hearing. We want to be able to have godly perspective and seek wise counsel. And if we just kind of keep to ourselves and keep to what we're hearing on social media and we're not actually talking about those things, we're not hearing from people that have walked the course, we need that. So that is what tonight is all about. And so that being said, obviously tonight's going to happen, which is going to be great. But we are also knowing that with that, this conversation is great, but if it's in one ear, out the other, and doesn't lead to transformation or doesn't lead to looking anything about this topic after tonight, then, why are we having this conversation? And so actually to continue that, we sent out a monthly newsletter with resources. So podcasts, books, scriptures, any of that. And so we'll have an opportunity at the end where you can scan a QR code, join our monthly email newsletter. But that's where we're gonna send out the recording of tonight, resources, all that good stuff. And then also, we are gonna have a time of Q&A. And so they're perfect. There's a question, or let's see, the slide that says Slido, texting questions. But basically, there's going to be a number up there. You can go to slido.com and type in that code number, and you can ask any question. It's all anonymous. So you can ask your questions on dating and that kind of thing. And we're going to have 10 minutes after our panel to be able to talk about that. And so please text me your questions and also like the ones that are resonating with you because those will populate at the top. And then I will see them, and then I will ask them, and then they will answer them not knowing what I am asking, and it's gonna be a fun time. So that being said, I'm gonna pass it off to our panel. Snipes, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Is this on? Awesome. So my name is Samuel Snipes. This is my lovely wife, Olivia Snipes. And we're so happy to be here. We are just feeling really blessed with this opportunity. And so thank you so much for having us, Kelsey and Reach. And yeah, I just want to start off by saying we're coming from a position of grace. We are married through God's grace. And so we just hope that some of the things we say tonight are relatable and helpful. So yeah, those are our names. We actually became friends, her and I, back in college at UW back in 2015. So we've known each other for about 9 years now. We started dating officially in 2021, so a few years ago. We dated for about a year and a half, and then we had a quick 5-month engagement and got married last August. So we've been married for about 6 months now, and we're loving it. It's great.
I currently am a program manager at Amazon. Sam is a dentist in Issaquah. A quick background on our love story, So like Sam said, we have known each other for 9 years, and so we were friends for 6 of those. With that being said, there's a lot that comes into just being friends, like with the opposite gender, figuring out like, do we like each other, do we not? I was in a serious relationship, and that had ended, and about 6 months after that ended, he had asked me out for the first time, and I had said no. But I will say, you know, God's grace. I will say that a lot of that had to do with just me not being ready to date again. It was pretty soon after I had gotten out of that relationship. But then fast forward, Sam had dated some other people. We were kind of friends. I think we had some good, healthy distance there for a little bit as well. And then in 2021, he had asked me on a date. That first date was very much an interrogation of like our whole friendship and everything that we had gone through. But then we started dating for a year and a half, like he mentioned, and then just recently got married. So we have a lot in there, and I'm sure it will come up through the questions as well. But definitely not your like straight line story. Very unconventional, and we're okay with that. But we've had to learn how to show that.
So good. Glad y'all are here. And Doolies, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Hello, guys. We are excited to be here. 95%. It means you guys are thirsty. And I'm okay with that, okay? we're excited to talk to you guys about it. A little thirsty, you know? My name is Andy Dooley. This is my gorgeous wife, Tiffany Dooley. I am an author. I am one of the in-game hosts for the Seattle Seahawks, and I do some stuff for social media. And we've been married for 13 years, and 14 in April. So we normally say the first 2 years.
Happily married for what, 12?
Yeah, happily married for 12. Those first 2 years were, yes, 2 alphas, okay? So we have 4 children. So you can imagine it's like herding kittens around trying to just do stuff. But it's been incredible. I'll let you say what you do, and then we tell them our story.
Yes, I'm a mom of those 4 children, and I'm in school. I have done a lot of ministry. That's kind of like my background, but Andy and I, our story is totally different. We were introduced through pastors, and we were told we were each other's spouse, basically. It's a funny story. We'll have to tell it another time. But we dated for 11 months and got married. And we had a 5-month engagement, so that's where we're similar, definitely. But we met, dated, engaged all in 11 months. And it's been a fun ride. So we're excited to share tonight.
I feel like you should share a little bit of that story.
Okay,
It's
Let me
good.
start it. Let me start it.
It's too good not for everybody to hear.
I was on staff at a church, and the pastors that I worked for went down to San Diego. I was here in Seattle. Went down to San Diego for a banquet, and Andy picked them up from the airport. So this is the first time meeting them. So they're in the car for 5 minutes, and anyone who's been in church, you know this is how it goes, right? Are you single? You know, it doesn't matter, do you love Jesus? Are you single? And so they asked him, are you single? And you said yes. Yeah, I guess I wasn't in the car. So
Yeah, I said, right. I'm in the car. I picked him up. This is my part. Right, so I'm in the car, and I've never met these pastors ever in my life. And within 5 minutes, they're like, are you single? And I'm like, oh, here we go. And then the wife said, your wife is in Seattle. And I'm like, oh, this is getting weirder and weirder. Then she calls Tiffany in Seattle. Do you know Andy Dooley? No. So she gives me the phone. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And while I'm like, Tiff's cracking up over the phone, and while I'm talking to her, are you guys Facebook friends? I don't know this girl. So then I check on my phone, look at Facebook, I see her profile picture, I'm like, oh, okay, all right. She's a baddie. I sent the request, and it was like, ding, popped. She was waiting, saw my picture come in. And then I'll let you take over from here.
Please. All right, I was not waiting. I had my phone in my hand. But yeah, so later that night, they call again. They're like, you have to talk to this guy. He is so funny. He's the life of the party. He's you. Hands the phone again. And so at this point, I've seen a picture, so I'm interested. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, so we're talking. And then Andy's like, all right, well, I'll hit you up later. I was like, hit me up? Who is this guy? And so we started talking, like every form of communication. He came up and met me, and 11 months later, we were married. So it did work. I think we're their only success story, by the way. So they like to tell the story.
But I bet they talk about it all the time. I love it. And y'all were 29 when you got married. Yes. And then how old were y'all when you got married? I mean, 6 months ago. So you're
27. I'm now 28, but 27.
And I was 29.
Awesome. Very cool. I just feel like it's cool to be able to hear from people that got married, later on. I got married at 30. So I don't know. I was under this misconception of, oh, I missed the boat if, I didn't get married right out of college or mid-20s. So I just want us all to hear this is normal, this is good, and we are here. So we're going to jump into all of our questions. The first one is, what are biblical qualities that we should be looking for in the person that we're dating? And what qualities should we be developing in ourselves?
Okay, I'll answer that one. One thing I would say is that dating is a modern cultural construct that is not in the biblical landscape. And what I mean by that is you're not going to find like, okay, when you date, this is what you should do. Or, oh, this couple dated and this is how they did it. You're just not going to find that in the Bible. And so I think what we should look for is what would the hope be of any dating relationship would be, hopefully you find the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with and you want to marry them. And so really, if you're looking for biblical qualities, then it should be, well, what is the biblical quality of a husband? What's the biblical quality of a wife? And then also I would say the foundation, I think, of any healthy marriage is friendship. So also when you're looking through scripture, what does the Bible say about friendship? What does it mean to be a friend? What should I be looking for in friendship? Because that's what you should be looking for in a spouse, and dating helps you find that person. So I would just encourage us that when it comes to, well, what is the biblical qualities I'm looking for? It's like, well, one, what's the goal of your dating life? Is it just to have fun? Is it just to meet new people? Is it just to make friends? Cool. Well, then you're looking for friendship. If you are hoping that this would eventually lead to a lifelong partner, then you should be looking at what qualities am I looking for in a husband? What qualities am I looking for in a wife? And do I see these qualities at all in this person? And then what should be developing in you? Well, if you want to be a wife, the qualities of a wife. If you want to be a husband, the qualities of a husband. And then if I could say one last thing, and also, the friendship is your relationship with God should be what's really developing. Because at the end of the day, we laugh and joke and say, yeah, we've been married for 13 years, happily married for 11. Well, that's because the first 2 years of our marriage were really difficult, really challenging, and what really caused us to stick with it. And we were even praying this week in preparation for this. We're so grateful that God has helped us stay married for 13 years. And it's been because we both have a personal relationship with God that has been the center of our relationship. And I can tell you, I have chosen Andy for 13 years, not just simply because I love him, but because of my love for God, because of my relationship with the Lord and the times that God has been the one to help me love him, help me learn how to support him, and all of those things, and vice versa. So what should be developing is the qualities that you plan to be in that future relationship, but then also that relationship and that bond, that loyalty to God, that devotion to God, because that a lot of times will keep you in that relationship in the long haul.
So good. We can all leave now. We all got what we needed from that. So good. Thank you, Tiffany. The next question is about preferences versus non-negotiables in a partner. We all have our conscious and unconscious lists of qualities that we want in someone. How important is that list? What are your thoughts?
All right, I will answer this one. So preferences versus non-negotiables. I think having a few non-negotiables that you feel really convicted by in your dating relationship is really important. I think having that before you start dating is also very important, so that when you actually start meeting people, you don't go back on those things that you once claimed were your non-negotiables. That needs to be established before you start dating, because it can be really easy once you start meeting other people and you're like, well, they're really cute, or I really like their personality, but maybe they don't have your core thing that you had as your non-negotiable. So if that is that they're a strong believer and that they are pursuing Christ in their life, like, you're not going to fall back on that non-negotiable just because you like someone's personality. So I would say that's like key with your non-negotiables. For preferences are so normal, and it's also really natural, but I think we can get to the point where we're not open-handed with the things that God has in store for us if our preferences and list is really exhaustive. We can get into the idea of like pigeonholing ourselves into a certain idea of a person that we want to date, but maybe that's not the person that God has intended for you to date in the first place. I know for me, the person that I ended up with, Sam, is like, there's qualities in him that I didn't even know that I needed, but that God gave me in him as a spouse. And so if I would have had this exhaustive list, I think that would have really derailed me from even being open to dating him in the first place. And so I would be really cautious with that, is just make sure that you have your key few non-negotiables, and then a list of preferences is okay, but just hold those lightly and hold those open-handedly. Another thing is, in our culture, I think we can laugh at, everyone creating their own lists. And something that has really helped me is flipping it on its head and thinking, would I be okay with someone evaluating me the way that I'm evaluating them? I've been really convicted by that myself. And when, you're evaluating someone else, it's like, wow, I want to see them through the lens that God sees them as a child of God, as valued by him as well. And I think if you start to flip it and just say, wow, if they're evaluating me like this, I would be offended, I would be hurt, I would, those types of things, it might be worth it just to double check the extent that you are going into the list, or how exhaustive that is. And then last thing, this is just more of a practical, this is something we did in college with our ministry that we met in. We called it the cake analogy. It's really silly, but essentially it's just 3 steps. It's like your base layer of your cake, your frosting, and your sprinkles. The base layer is like the few things that those are your non-negotiables. For me, it was like, loves Jesus, great communicator, and I had this thing where I wanted him to walk into a room and be able to talk to anyone. And then the second thing is the frosting. Those are things that you could live without, but like maybe they're a little bit more important to you. And then the sprinkles, it's like, I think I said like play guitar, but we're still working on that one. Yeah. But it's like, just to have an idea for yourself of what you do care about, and the things that you're like, this, if it didn't happen, it'd be fine. But I think just to be open-handed to the things that the Lord has for you as well, because he knows us so much better than we know ourselves, and he knows what we're ultimately going to be needing in a spouse as well.
That's so good, Olivia. One thing I'll also add to that is, if anybody like in here has made a conscious like list of things, is that just the male or female version of you that you're actually looking for? Because more likely than not, God's probably not asking two people that are exactly the same to walk into a dating and marriage relationship. One, kind of boring. Two, no refinement. You're just kind of going off of, and we're not in marriage to like have an easy life. It's like we're being sanctified to the person of Jesus, and we're preparing the other person for marriage. And so just check your list, make sure it's not the female or male version of you. Number 3, kicking it off to Andy on this one. I met an awesome person that I'm interested in dating. They're not a Christian, but I am. What should I do?
You could. And you can. Should you? I always like to take it back to the scripture, though. In 2 Corinthians 6:14-16, it talks about being unequally yoked. Now, picture this. You have 2 oxen and you have a yoke over their neck. One oxen over here is like trying to go right. This oxen's over here trying to go left. You guys can't fulfill a mission or do anything or go forward if you're fighting against each other. Or this oxen's super strong, this one's weak. You're dragging this one. You don't want that in a relationship. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that would say, you know what, I am tired of waiting. Maybe I'll flirt to convert. Maybe I'll get them over here, you know? It's a rarity that works. There are some stories out there, yes. But at the end of the day, I want you guys to realize choosing your mate is the second most important decision you'll ever make. That person that's gonna be in your life will make an impact that no one else will make on your life. They have the influence. They are around you on a regular basis. Did my wife come into our marriage loving fantasy football? Nope. She didn't even know it existed. And this year she played fantasy football. Okay? Let them know. Okay?
I'm looking for leagues, so if you join.
She said she got you. Okay? I bring that up is because there are little things that you don't know that you have that you will influence your mate. You'll influence the person in your life. You want to make sure that it's okay for you to just be patient. Wait. Let God lead you. I understand this season right now. I understand. Hormones are flowing. You see another person. Maybe they can be that person, but I'm going to tell you right now, practically speaking, if you have someone in your life that you're unequally yoked, what are you going to do when you guys get in an argument? When you guys get upset and you go your opposite ways? There will be arguments. You will go through your tough times in your relationships. But the thing I knew was that even though she's on the other side of the room, she's going to go to Jesus. I'm going to go to Jesus. And then we're going to meet at the top together. And God's going to help work it out for us. What are you going to do in parenting? When someone's, I want to take them to church. I care less about church. I'll go on Christmas. That stuff's going to eat away at you. What are you going to do if one of you guys are sick and the other person doesn't love Jesus? They're going to sit by your bedside and just hoping, I hope you get better. Or do you want a prayer warrior who's going to be on your side and get all the other people that they know to intervene for you and pray for you on your behalf? That's what you want. So I want to, inspire and motivate you guys today to be like, you know what? I'm going to be confident that I want a Christian woman. I'm going to be confident that I want a Christian man. And if I got to wait, that's okay. And if someone makes fun of me about that, you don't get me, you don't get me. That man went over your head. If you don't get me, you don't get me. And trust me, I'm a gem.
So good. Oh, man, that's awesome. I love it. Next question we have is, what does it look like to date well? In other words, what does it look like to date in an intentional, God-honoring way that allows room for both fun and evaluation?
All right, I will answer this one. So I think dating well starts and I know you have a session on singleness, but I think it really does start with singleness. I've heard before it's not 50-50, it's 100-100 coming into a relationship. And so if you're looking for someone to fill you, if you're looking for that relationship for fulfillment, that's just ultimately you're going to start dating off in the wrong place. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing, when it comes to dating, I think there's a lot of pressure, especially in the Christian community, that can be added where it's like, is this person gonna be my husband? Like right off the bat, it's like we start to get into the details about things before we even figure out if we like them. And I think there is a healthy balance between figuring out if that person is what's right for you, but also just enjoying the process and having fun. And trusting God with the details. I think we can, get in our heads about, well, this person doesn't live in my city, or, they have this job, or all of these things. And if it is meant to be, like, the Lord will work those things. And your heart also will begin to shift and change with those things as well. And so I think just trusting the Lord with each of those steps along the way, but also trying not to add as much pressure is really key. But then when it comes to dating intentionally, like Tiffany said, there's not a lot of guidance in the Bible on dating, but there is guidance on how we should treat one another. And, the golden rule, like treat others how you want to be treated. And so I think right now we hear a lot of the time, like people ghosting one another, or people carrying things on like too long or longer than they should. And I think it's just really important to be so clear with your intentions. There's also that saying, like, clear is kind, and it really is true, as cliche as it is. Like, clear with your intentions, clear with what is going on in your own life. We're not perfect people, and so just being clear with where you're at, if that is ready to date, if it's not. And then just being open to what the Lord has for you in that season, being intentional with them. And I think also understanding, like, we are both, coming into this as sinners, as broken people, and there's grace in that process. But that ultimately, if you trust the Lord in that he will, like, lead you in that relationship and through it, or he will lead you to, go separate ways if that's not what's meant to be.
That's so good. We were talking about this, but what are your thoughts on a guy asking a girl out? And should she say yes just because he asked her out? Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so this is a hot take. This is such a well, I don't know, it might not be, but I think you should say yes to a first date. And I got in a position where I went on 2 dates, 2 singular dates in 4 years between my last relationship and dating Sam. I got to the point where I wasn't getting asked out on any dates, and I felt like all my friends were getting asked out. The same person was getting asked out multiple times. And so I told my friends, I was like, if there are any single guys, I will go on any blind date you set me up with. I want to know their first name, and that's it. And so one of my friends came up. They brought a guy, or the guy called me, went on a first date, and it just gave me the confidence, I think, to just even go and get out there. I think one thing, too, is God created us all in his image, and you can always pull qualities out in someone that is so good. And even if it's not going to be the person that you end up with, you will start to evaluate if there are qualities that you do and don't like. So I think it's always an evaluation process. Don't say yes to every single date. Like, that's not great.
Please don't do that.
That's not wise advice. But if you think that, it could be beneficial to get to know someone, I think we do put a lot of pressure on that first date. And so just to, like, alleviate some pressure and just say, it is just a first date, and it doesn't have to be more than that. So I think just taking that pressure out of it as much as you can is really key.
That's so good. Because, again, Christian culture is like, if I say yes to this date, I am saying that I am interested in marrying them. And whoa, that's a little bit of a jump. A little bit of a jump. And so I think it's just like taking the pressure off and saying, you know what? Maybe I get to know someone and for who they are rather than what they can do for me. And so I think it's really important to, like, again, honor that person, be really clear if you don't see it beyond that first date. And there can be friendship after that. And maybe you have a friend who you're like, oh, I actually know someone that you would be interested in, right? Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Cool opportunity. Next question we have is, we hear a lot in Christian culture that it's the man's job to pursue. What does this pursuit look like? Does it mean that girls can't show interest in a guy or ask them out?
Let me answer this. Okay, fellas. How many men in here? I just want to make sure I see. How many men in this room?
Represent. Y'all are like putting your
can't
arms
hear.
down here.
Are there men in this room?
Yes, come on.
Can the men speak up, please? Okay, there we go. And let me tell you right now, out the gates, any strong, beautiful, powerful woman that means anything wants a strong man to be able to lead them. Yes. I'm not saying that the women can't lead. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that as a man, go ahead and pursue. See a woman and show them that you have it, that you are gonna be someone that they can look to, come to. And like in a relationship, it is okay for the woman to be interested because this is 2024. Yeah. A girl is gonna be like, I see him. If he don't step up or speak up, I'm gonna step up. If that woman steps up to you, awesome. That just means you need to step up to another level. Because at the end of the day, guys, you want to lead that household. Because if you want to have kids, you may not want to have kids. I'm not going to speak for everybody. You're not just leading your wife. You're leading your home. And it is okay for you to pursue a woman. It is welcomed. And you don't have to be weird. Unfortunately, the church dating system, must I say, is weird. I can't believe when I was in my church, I won't say what church, but just how it was going down. And I came from worldly dating. And I walked in here and I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, honestly, just, he's sitting there Google-eyed looking at him. He's like 26-year-old. Like, bro, let's ask her on a date, okay? Men in this room, if you see her, ask her. If she says no, it's okay. Because guess what? You get better, you practice. And as a godly man, I'm gonna just tell you this little hack. Okay? Get in the metaphorical passenger seat and let God lead you. Work on yourself, grow with God. Let your discernment pick up. Let the Holy Spirit speak to you. That one girl that you may be interested, God may tell you and tap your shoulder like, no, that's not the one. But if you're not spending time with God for yourself, then you're just going off your own emotions and your own actions, and you're now working off your flesh. And that's not how God wants you to pursue a relationship. Be a leader, men. And ladies, if you see him, let him know you're interested. And then let him lead.
I love it. So good. Oh, man, that was awesome. I just lost my place, so I'm going to read up here. Let's see. The next question is, Sam and Olivia, y'all were friends a long time before you started dating. What changed? What advice would you give for those transitioning from friends to more than friends? And how do you even initiate that kind of conversation? What are the pros and cons to that?
So I'll speak on this first. I will say the transition from friends to being more than friends is most likely going to be pretty confusing and dicey. Oftentimes there's this time where one person catches feelings before the other, and then you're kind of in this limbo zone of, well, do I tell her? Do I hang out with her and flirt with her and see if she flirts back? So I would say that just give yourself some grace in that transition period. What changed for me, so like Olivia said, I asked her out in an inopportune time at the beginning. And after that, we did have some distance in that space. We were still friends. She was super sweet to me when she said no. So we were able to stay friends, which was really great. But during that 2 years that we, weren't really hanging out as much, I feel like I had a lot of personal growth in my faith. I think I was exactly what you were just saying, Andy. I think I was operating in the dating sense off my flesh. The other parts of my life, I was very much walking with the Lord, but I think I was trying to take dating into my own hands. I was getting impatient. I was 23. I was in grad school. I was just trying to find someone who I thought fit what I wanted. And I think the Lord was like really good to me in that he gave me that time and that the timing was the way that it was. I needed to mature in different ways. I needed to give God that area in my life to show me what I really wanted, to show me that I was not ready to find my wife at that time. And then those 2 years later, I was really following the Lord. And the week before I met Olivia, I really felt like I gave the Lord everything. I was like, I'm done looking. I'm done trying to figure this out myself. God, please just show me who you want me to be with. And literally the next week, we were at a football game together, and that's when we connected and asked her out. So a lot of maturity, and I think a lot of my personal growth with God.
That's awesome.
And then what changed for me, I think I had a lot of healing from my past relationship that I was in. And then I also saw the maturity in him and also matured myself a ton. Just like what Andy was talking about, I knew that I could probably manufacture like something to happen if he still had feelings for me. I didn't really know, but I was like, well, maybe we could like piece it together and I could try to make this work. But there was just this like voice inside my head that I was like, Olivia, if you are going to be the one that starts this from the beginning or tries to make something happen, it's not going to go well. And so once he took the lead and then asked me out, I was like, yes, that's my open door. Because I kind of just had to like submit that part of myself, I think, to the Lord and just acknowledge like this is not my decision to make at this time. And then he came across and I said yes. So I think from transitioning from being friends to more than friends, like Sam said, though, it can be kind of a confusing situation. The piece that I think we both had to learn, you hear all the time when there's friends, like, but I don't want to lose them as a friend. And this was something that I think hit us both kind of like right on the head, where we both had to realize we were going to lose each other as friends regardless. Either we were going to date and we were going to break up and we weren't going to be friends, or we weren't going to date and we were going to go through our life and we were probably still going to maintain friendship and maintain that same level of friendship until we both met other people and then pursued our own relationships. And then that relationship of friendship was going to have to change. I think if, we ended up meeting other people and honoring whoever else we met. So I think that was the piece that for both of us really helped like solidify that we wanted to move forward as friends, was just taking that risk out of the equation and saying, well, if we lose each other regardless, let's just see if this is going to work. Yeah. And it also took the pressure out. And then also with friendship, if you are friends and have been friends for a while, you most likely also have mutual community and mutual friends. And I think that's an amazing thing. And I highly encourage dating in community. But I think at the beginning, you can have a lot of opinions and a lot of different voices that, want to give their 2 cents because they know you both so well and they love you like a lot. I think as much as you can, try to keep those voices out at the beginning and maybe go to a few or like 1 or 2 trusted individuals if you do have, those things that you want to bounce off of. But then try to keep it between the two of you until you've established this is something that we want to move forward with. Just because it can get confusing when you're in, the friends care about the friend group and they care about the community, and that's important. But if you want to try this relationship, that's important too.
So a couple more things. One of the parts of this was like, what's some advice to go forward with that? So I think transparency with your feelings towards that person is going to be really huge. I had to swallow my pride the second time I asked her out because I already got rejected once. So it took me a long time to actually be like, well, why do I have to be the one that does that? Why can't she just make the first move? So I would say just finally me swallowing some pride and just sharing with her that, hey, I still have feelings for you. It's been 2 years. I've dated other people, but you're the one that I want to be with. That's tough. It's easier said than done. But when that happened, I feel like there was a lot of clarity. So that's really important. Some of the pros and cons of dating your friend is, like Andy and Tiffany said, you want your dating relationship to be like an extension of friendship. the best foundation for a good dating relationship is to be friends. You have to like them. You're going to spend a lot of time with them when you're married. So you really want them to be your best friend. Some pros of that, yeah, you know their community, you know their lifestyle. Hopefully you know their family and some other friends. That's really good information to know about who you're dating. Some cons are there can be some rocky history. You can know potentially they dated some of your other friends, some other people in the same small group. So that can also be dicey. And you have to, yeah. And that happened with us. And so there has to be wisdom. And I was not very wise. I shouldn't have asked her out 6 months after she was dating one of my close friends at the time. So you learn. You learn. It's fine. So yeah, just try to have wisdom and you'll learn through it.
Grace upon grace, man. It's all good. The Lord works it out. Oh, man, that's awesome.
This was a God thing.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to hit it back to some of the earlier questions that I accidentally skipped over. And so when it comes to dating apps, how do we go about that well? Any practical advice? Is that really the best way to meet people nowadays?
Okay, you're hearing from me again. So I did the dating apps. Originally, I was not on the dating apps. When COVID came around, I got on the dating apps because I feel like I wasn't meeting anybody new. I was in the position where I wanted to date, and so I said, well, my community is not really growing, so this is an online community that's massive. So I got on it. I ended up having 2 relationships out of the online dating, which each lasted about 3 to 6 months. So in dating apps in general, my advice is to not treat it like shopping. It's super easy to start swiping and really forgetting that these are people behind those pictures. You don't want to treat it like social media. It's not just a game. I think people are putting forward their best foot. They're also maybe putting forward a front. So my piece of advice is when you do date on dating apps, really go into that first, second date, trying not to think about their profile and too much of what they said. Try to just get to know them like you met them on a blind date. I think Christian means a lot of different things on dating apps. So you'll see just about everyone who wants a Christian or used to be a Christian, they'll put Christian on there. I met a lot of people who that meant a lot of different things. Some of them weren't walking with Christ. Some of them were. So I would just encourage to really go open-handed into the dating app world. Go open-handed into those first dates. And again, just try to honor them well. Knowing that this might be your only time you get to see them, hopefully you make a good impression on them. And if they don't have the same faith level as you, don't judge them for it. They're just in a different season as you. I also would say just pray before you open the apps because it sounds weird, but if you pray, your mind will be more focused on the Spirit, more in tune with the Lord, and then He's going to help you have a good perspective.
A word. Come on. That's so good. No, that's so true. And kind of like we were talking about those non-negotiables earlier, I think there might be, or I'll just speak for myself. When I was on the apps for a very small season of time, I was always assuming, like giving people the benefit of the doubt of like, oh, they didn't put Christian, but you know, things in their profile look like they love God. I might give them a shot. And I'm like, no, if you love the Lord, you're going to put that you love the Lord. If you're trying to go for the end game, like, you're going to be transparent about that. And so just being choosy, I think, is really important in that. Let's talk about the role that feelings and emotions play during dating. How much weight should we put on feeling a spark when it comes to dating decisions? And on the other hand, how important is chemistry in the long run?
Okay.
I love a good oof before a question.
Feeling a spark. I wouldn't put too much weight on feeling a spark, okay? You can feel a spark by seeing someone walk by, like, oh, she bad. He looks good. You know, like, you can feel a spark. You can eat pizza and feel a spark, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't put a bunch of weight on, yes, I got you. Okay, but seriously, The biggest thing is going to be your chemistry. Pay attention to the chemistry, because at the end of the day, your friendship in a relationship's going to go way past the physical. Because yes, you love your wife or your husband, and yes, you want to be, make love with them and all those good things, but you're not going to do that 24/7. You're not, okay? Sorry to burst your bubbles, guys. But however, what you are going to do is be around this person all the time. You're going to want to like them. You know how many times we'll watch a TV show on Netflix or something and then pause? And then next thing you know, we just did this last night, talked for like an hour and a half, pause. We can cross paths in the house and we talk about something because I just love, this is my person, this is my best friend. That's what you want. You don't want just someone that you tolerate or you just think is hot, because newsflash, you will get older, body will change. I don't care how much you try to string it on. You want to love that person. You want to have real chemistry. You want to love the love they have for the Lord. Like, you should be inspired and you should admire your wife or your husband because they not only look good, but they'll go into their prayer closet. They will reach out to God those tough times. Transition happens. We need to move. I may switch jobs. You need to have your person to go to and have that chemistry to be able to talk things out with them. So, yes, spark is good because, let's be honest. If you're not attracted to that person, don't let a church person just tell you, just marry her. Just marry him. And then every night you wake up in the morning like, oh, she can sing. She does worship. She's a great communicator. Let's be real, guys. Like, you want to be attracted to him.
Please, please, let me out. That was so good. I cannot sing and I do not lead worship. So that's, clearly. No, when I used to teach, an internship program for college students, and I taught a class called Biblical Relationships. And in that class, we talked about 3 things that you really need to have if you're considering somebody, and that was friendship, attraction, and chemistry. And I think that sometimes, we will settle for maybe 2 out of 3, and you can't. You cannot settle. You need all 3. If you're not attracted to someone physically, that relationship is not gonna continue. I can just tell you that. If you don't have chemistry, and by the way, chemistry is something other people can see in you. So when it comes to like chemistry, we're not just talking about, the spark and friendship. They can all kind of, go together. But chemistry is something where it's like we just fit. Even if we're different, even if, it's like what Andy said. I love that. If you get me, you get me. And that's what when you're dating, that is something you're looking for. This is a life partner, if that's where the direction you're trying to go. If you're dating to have fun and make friends, cool, but be upfront with that. Mm-hmm. Be very clear that is your intention. I'm not intending to get married. I don't want a life partner or long-term. I just want friends. Make sure you let the people know that. But if you're dating for like a life partner, you need to find this. You need a person who gets you. Yeah. There are so many times in our relationship we laugh. I'm like, I couldn't do this with just anybody. Yeah. They wouldn't get me. They wouldn't get that reference. They wouldn't understand that. They would be like, wait, what are you talking about? And there are times when that happens, but we get each other. You know what I'm saying? And so that's something I would say because it's easy to be like, oh, chemistry and all this and spark. It's like, it's the getting of each other. It's like, man, like you get me. I'm weird and you're weird and you get that, That's, I believe that. I believe that's something, I believe God has that. I really do believe that. And I think that can develop. But you really, hopefully, you understand the value of all 3. The friendship, the chemistry, the attraction.
So good.
That's so good. Along those lines, and maybe this is just like a pulse check within yourself, but when it comes to that like friendship and attraction and chemistry and all that, it's like like of the people that you surround yourself with and the friends that you're with, kind of combining those two questions of like, how do you know to initiate? Like, who do you gravitate toward the most? I know for me, whenever I was in a room with my husband Merrick, I always gravitated toward him because I just loved being around him. And that was something for me that I was like, and he was my friend for 6 months also before we started dating. And I was like, I just genuinely love being around him. And I always like leave with a smile on my face. I have the best time. He makes the worst and best jokes. And so that was something that I was like just so attracted to. But it took a second for me to be like, something more than that. So shout out to you, babe. Anyway, we are going to talk about boundaries now. Who doesn't love this conversation? Woo! Everyone's question. So what do you think boundary conversations should practically look like? What things should be covered? And how soon into dating and how frequently should those conversations happen? I know all y'all are going to have comments on this. Bring it.
So this is similar to what Olivia was talking about with non-negotiables. I think boundaries are really good to set prior to dating, because you don't know when that boundary might take effect. The first day you go on a date, you guys might be hanging out past midnight, and maybe that's a boundary you had. Maybe you didn't want to hang out past midnight ever during dating. So I think that's just a good place to start with boundaries. Ask some older people who have been married or dated. Ask what their boundaries were. Listen to some podcasts. We'll have some resources, especially the ones that we'll give. We have some good boundary podcasts. Just try to figure out what works for you and know your why behind it as well. Why do you have that boundary? Express that and explain that to who you're dating, because a boundary it might sound nice, but it's the why behind it that's going to carry the weight when it actually comes into play. That's what's going to let it play out in you. If you understand your why, and then also your partner should understand, okay, this is why he's doing this. It's because he loves me. It's because he cares about this relationship.
A couple of things I've heard about boundaries is if you have two people in a relationship and both have different boundaries, always go with the stricter boundary. I think hopefully those are pretty aligned, but I would say just always default to the stricter one, and talk about boundaries as frequently as you need to. There might, like for us, there were seasons where maybe once every 3 months we talked about it, and then there were seasons where we were talking about it every week. And those boundaries had to constantly change, or not the boundaries, but the steps that we took to enforce the boundaries had to constantly change to make sure that we were honoring those. I think have a lot of grace for yourself, but also a lot of conviction and follow that conviction. If you're actively making choices to change the things that are happening, if you do cross boundaries, just make sure that you're both headed in the same direction and are on the same page with that. And then also have an accountability partner that's even outside of your relationship that both of you trust. I have a best friend that he knows really well and trusts her advice and vice versa. But we both know who those people are in our life and also in our marriage too. But I would say if it is a more serious relationship and you need an accountability partner, bring those people into it and say, hey, I need to be held accountable for this on my own, but also we need to be held accountable as a couple. And then I would also say you can get creative with the different boundaries that you set. I think oftentimes we think of just the boundaries don't have sex outside of marriage, but also you can have time boundaries of when you hang out, space boundaries, we're not going to go into each other's bedrooms. You can even have boundaries for a specific period of time, maybe this week we just need to not kiss each other. Those are all different kinds of boundaries that can happen, but you can make specific boundaries for yourself that make sense and for your for the couple. Sometimes even hanging exclusively out in public, doing whatever you need to do to protect and make that the most important thing that you do. I cannot stress enough how important it is to hold those boundaries for yourself, for your future marriage. And then the last thing I'll say is something that has always helped me in past relationships and in our relationship was most likely that person will go on to marry someone. And so treat that person as if you would want, okay, wait, how do I say this? If you're dating someone and you end up going separate ways, honor and respect that person for their future spouse. Yeah. I think if, in all of Sam's past relationships, I would, love if the girls that he dated honored and respected our relationship and vice versa. I think that's a really important thing to remember when you're in a dating relationship.
I want to say, I think sometimes when you're grown, you can talk to yourself like, I'm grown. I don't need boundaries or, that's for teenagers, because they're just horny, you know what I mean? And it's like, so they need the boundaries, but we're mature adults. The reality is you need boundary. Like every single person on this planet has boundaries. And we have to learn how to respect boundaries. If you're going to have children, you're definitely going to need boundaries. If you're going to work a job, you have to have boundaries. So it is an adult thing. I just want to say that boundaries are an adult thing. And I would say for, Andy and I, we weren't virgins when we got together. And so we had physical boundaries. And I would say the purpose of your boundaries comes from your past and your present. So meaning like whatever your past was is going to help to shape your boundaries. And if you've had a physical past in all of your relationships, they've been physical, you're going to need to set some boundaries if you're deciding to make a change in this next relationship you're in. And so you're going to need some of those boundaries. Your past is going to help shape those. Your past is going to bring purpose to your boundary. Your present is going to bring purpose to your boundary. If you're not ready for marriage, if marriage is like 2, 3, 4 years out, you need to recognize, because the thing about being physical, one, it changes the relationship. And we know this about being physical, it accelerates really fast. So, and once you've gone one step, you just keep going another step, right? And so your present also needs to provide purpose to your boundaries. So think about where you're at in your life. You're like, I don't want to be married for another 2, 3 years. Then focus on your time, like you said, your physical boundaries and everything. But what brings power to your boundary is your vision for your future. When we were dating, we said, the Bible says in Proverbs, without vision, people cast off restraints. A boundary is meant to restrain you. It's meant to keep you in the place where you want to go, what you want to have. So there were countless times in our 11 months. There's a reason why it was 11 months too, by the way. In our 11-month journey, all right, there were countless times that Andy and I had conversations that our vision for our future, and our future, what we were thinking about is, I want to be able to look my children in the eyes one day and say, although I was physical in other relationships, when it came to your father and where I was at in my relationship with the Lord and where I was at in my convictions, by God's grace and by the things that he helped us, we waited. And I want to offer that to them. I knew I wanted to have that conversation with them. We didn't even have kids. So your vision for your future is what brings power to the boundary. You have purpose, your past and your present. That's what brings the purpose. But the power in making the choice to get up when you don't want to get up, to not hang out or do these things, the power comes in the future you're trying to build, the relationship you want to have for the rest of your life. So I would encourage you that.
They crushed it. I'm not going to stand. But I was sitting here, and because the word I like using is conviction. And I wanted to tell you guys the definition of that: a firmly held belief or opinion. So I would suggest that you guys write down your convictions. There's one thing to say, like, these are my convictions. You guys can sit at Starbucks, have a conversation. These are my convictions in the relationship. But then when you're in that moment, it kind of just evaporates because your flesh takes over. It's different when you write something down and you put it up and you're like seeing it on your phone, you're seeing it on your wall. These are my convictions. Like, you should feel strong and empowered by, these are my convictions, this is what I stand by, and that's it. I'm firmly planting my foot down on this, and I'm letting my future wife know this, or my future husband know this. And then you guys do talk about it, because there are different seasons that you're in. You're in the beginning stages of the relationship. That's one season. You're dating for a while. But let me tell you, you put the ring on it, you ask her to marry you, and she says yes, and then it's like 2 weeks left up until that time. The devil turns the heat up. He's just over here, he's cranking it up. So like Olivia said, there may be this week, I'm gonna just talk to you on FaceTime, okay? I might not even talk to you on FaceTime, okay? I can't even see you right now. And it's okay. Get those coals off your lap, and just be aware of the season that you're in and write your convictions down.
That's so good. I've heard it said, and you might have heard this too, but with boundaries, it's like we all love a good fire in a fireplace. It provides warmth, and fire is powerful. But the second, and it's within the boundaries of a fireplace, but the second that fire is in the middle of the living room, it can burn the house down. So that is why boundaries are so important, because they provide that structure. And so I think that's important. Our next question is about conflict. How do you work through conflict in dating relationships in a God-honoring way?
Well, one, I think that sometimes when we have conflict in relationships, we may question if this is a good relationship, because we think, because Hollywood tells us, that you're going to meet your person and you guys are just going to get along and you're just going to love each other and you're going to stare in each other's eyes all the time and it's just going to be amazing. And that is not true. There is going to be conflict. You have conflict in every single relationship. So I would encourage you, if you are not good at conflict, get better. Okay, right now, wherever you're at, if that's reading books, if that's doing a learning podcast, if that's you see somebody who's really good at it and you're like, hey, teach me your ways, because in all relationships, most of the breakdown is conflict. And it could be conflict over money, it could be conflict over sex, whatever it is, but that's how relationships end, is because conflict can't get resolved. And so really briefly, there are 5 conflict resolution styles. There's avoidance, there's accommodation, there is compromise, there is collaboration, and there's competition. A lot of people think, all conflict should resolve itself through collaboration. That makes the most sense, right? We both try to win-win in this situation. But the reality is conflict can be resolved in any one of those 5 ways. And the greatest thing you can do in helping develop your conflict resolution skills is to become more self-aware. Is to become more self-aware of what's important to you. Because in every single one of those conflict resolutions, which, we could do a whole class on that. But in any one of those, really when it comes down to it, you need to know what's important to you, and you need to know what you want. You need to know what's important to the other person, and you know what they want. Because there are times when Andy, this is important to Andy, I could care less. So I'm not even going to get into conflict over that. It's called avoidance. I don't need to, you can have your way. There are other times when what he wants is more, he wants it more than I want it, so I accommodate. I say, okay, that's cool, fine. There are other times when we both want something, so we have to compromise because we both can't get what we want. So we're both going to have to give up something in order to resolve the conflict. And then there's other times when we cannot give up what we want, so we have to find a solution where we both can get what we want. These are the different ways in which you can resolve conflict. But I remember a long time ago, a pastor told us once that the relationship is more important than being right. And so you have to make sure that you see what is the value of the relationship and what's the value of the outcome. And when it comes to conflict, constantly trying to resolve. We've had timeouts. We've been, I told you, the first 2 years, we had counseling. We had all kinds of stuff because it was like, you need to help me because I can't be 50 years with this, And so we learned we've had to do timeouts. We've had to come back and say, hey, we're going to talk about this. But one thing that Andy and I think we're constantly still working on is resolving conflict, is not just letting it, just fizzle out. Because what happens? It comes back. right? And now we're fighting about this, and we're also fighting about that because we never resolved that. So learning how you can do yourself a favor in getting better at resolving conflict, learning, but getting better at learning about yourself, becoming self-aware, becoming a person who knows this is what I want, this is what's important to me, and really share that with the person that you're in a relationship with.
That's so good. One of the best pieces of advice that I've learned on conflict is this concept of owning your 1%. And in conflict, no one is 100% wrong or 100% right. Let's take, like abuse and whatnot out of that, of course. But like with just like everyday conflict and conversations, my husband Merrick is much better at this than I am. But when it comes to it, it's like, let's just even say that like I am 99% wrong, he'll still own his 1% of how he contributed to that and own that. And that's helps me feel really heard. And vice versa, where it's like if he did something that was in the wrong, I will still own my 1%. Now, am I perfect at it? Absolutely not. He's much better than I am. But that's something that we both strive for, is like to own our 1% in conflict. Our last question before we head into Q&R or Q&A is, what are the signs that it might be time to end the relationship? Ending on a high note, how can I go about this in an honoring way?
Good luck, guys.
I'll take us home. Okay, so I've been on both sides of this. I have been the one to break up with someone. I have also been the one that has been broken up with. I think some signs that it's time to end, and again, this is, there are probably more than this, but I think if your missions are starting to grow apart, that's probably a sign. You can both be two really great believing Christians, but if your missions are going in two different places, maybe that's just a sign. It doesn't need to end, but maybe it's just like maybe. I think if you're not prioritizing the person, or you're not thinking about them, or it's just not really a priority in your life, maybe that's just a sign that you're losing interest, or there's just the relationship is not maybe a priority for you, or maybe you're not even really ready for a relationship. And then I think if boundaries are being challenged over and over and over, or if there's just broken trust or anything like that, I think that's probably a sign that relationships should end. But I think some advice on how to do this and how to do this well, I would say be extremely mindful of the words that you choose and how you talk to that person in a breakup conversation. When I was being broken up with, had words spoken over me and things that I did not believe were true, but stuck with me for years because that person had such a prominent place in my life, and I was also really vulnerable with that person. And so when those words were spoken over me, they clung to me like truth. And so I would say be really careful with the words that you choose. Try to, call out and affirm that person, but also still make it very clear that the relationship is ending. I think you can do that without saying like, you're this, or you're wrong in this, or I don't think this. So just be really careful with that. I also like to say, as much as you can, try to make it a clean break. Not, texting all the time, and have like a good healthy distance, whether that's muting them on social media or just taking some space apart if you are in mutual community from whatever you're, maybe crossing over in spaces together. I think if there's a blindsided happening where like someone is breaking up with someone and they weren't, seeing it coming, maybe one more conversation is necessary just so that other person can get closure. I know that happened with me, and I didn't see it coming, so I didn't really have time to process what was happening in the moment. So I think having another conversation for closure is probably okay. But just making sure that you do, if you are the one breaking up with them, that you're not stringing that person along. I think that can just be really harmful to that person as they might be going through their own healing journey through that. And then, it goes back to like treat others how you'd want to be treated. Don't talk about them negatively after the process. Seattle, it's small, and the Christian community in Seattle is small. And, as much as you can, speak highly of others. I think that's, goes without saying. And then also, this one, I think if God is calling you truly to be single, feel free, with discernment to use that. But I think sometimes we can blame God and say, oh, well, God's calling me to be single. And then next week you might see them in another relationship and you're like, wow, that singleness lasted a long time. But that happened to me, and someone said they were called to be single, and it really hurt me with my relationship with God, because I was like, am I not hearing you, God? Am I not also seeing that I should be single or that he should be single? And so really be careful. If that is the truth, like trust your discernment and what the Lord is telling you for sure. But I think when you bring the Lord into it, just make sure that you're careful about those words that you choose as well, because it has lasting effects on the person for sure.
That's so good. Yeah, having like the God card, almost like, yeah, that's
I
not
call
honoring.
that the Christian cop out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good versus just sharing how you actually feel. Yeah, not like I'm trying to give anybody a good way to break up with someone when I say this, but just a perspective when it comes to breakups is like, you are a puzzle piece and maybe your piece just didn't fit together, but they're still a great puzzle piece. You know what I mean? Where it's like, just don't quote that while you're breaking up with someone. But I like them. What I mean is like, I think it's so easily in those circumstances to just take a breakup so personally. All right, reel it in. I know that was funky, but I promise I'm going somewhere with it, where it's like, I think that there's a really big temptation to believe less about ourselves as a result of a breakup and entertain lies of the enemy. And so really just like, you are a wonderful puzzle piece. You just didn't fit with that other puzzle piece. Maybe that's more so of an encouragement if you're, don't use that. Because then they're gonna hear this, and that's gonna be fun for everyone. Anyway, let's go to Q&R. Thank you so much. We're gonna do some rapid fire answers. This is gonna be fun for everybody. And so this is on our Slido. You can text questions in there. I will say this is the most entertaining list of questions that we've had yet. So thank you for this. Wish we had a whole list of whole other time to talk about just these questions because they're rich. Anyway, the first question is, what do you do about doubts or thinking that are, let me read that again, sorry. What do you do about doubts or thinking that there is better out there? When should you listen to those thoughts? Sam was ready, come on.
I think social media makes it so easy to always think that there's something better on the other side. Like, you'll start a relationship and halfway through, or maybe 3 dates in, you'll be like nitpicking all the things that they don't have, and you'll be thinking about this account that you don't even know this person, but you're like, well, that person has it. So I think it gets really easy to compare when you're going through that.
Okay, we're moving on. No, but honestly, I think that it is like the nitpicking is so real. But I also think that in those, it's like the second part of that question is, when should you listen to those thoughts of in that process of evaluation? And I think that's something where it's like, if I know the calling on my life, the gifts that the Lord has given me, is this in alignment with the Lord is calling them? Because if it's not, then there might be someone out there that is a better fit, that is in alignment with what the Lord is calling me to, or the ways that the Lord wants me to operate in the giftings that he's blessed me with. And so that is a real time to be able to consider, is there someone maybe that like is more in alignment with the vision for my life? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Next question is, there we go. See, it always switches up. So like the ones that you want to hear, because we're doing a few of them. What are ways a woman can show up for someone I'm sorry, I'm butchering this, y'all. What are ways a woman can show up? Oh my gosh. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Tongue twister. What are ways a woman can show someone she's interested with, still giving space for him to lead? Did that make sense? Yeah. I know, I'm so sorry. What are ways a woman can show someone she's interested with, still giving space for him to lead? Oh, okay, cool. I'm sorry if that was your question, I butchered it.
I mean, I think you can be verbal. I think you can have a conversation. I think this goes back to the question about the pursuit. And I think that it's okay for you to say, hey, would you ever want to get coffee? Or, hey, we've been hanging out, would you ever want to get dinner or anything like that? I think you can do that. And if the person's like, yeah, totally, let's do it. And then you have a good time. I think you, as women, you should be mindful if you're the one doing all the pursuing. I think you shouldn't worry about the initial pursuit. I think it's the continual pursuing. You're doing all the texting. You're doing all the calling. You're planning all the dates. You're doing all that. You are the pursuer. You need to recognize that. And then I think you should then start to investigate a little bit about the relationship. Is this person really into you? Because I can tell you, if a man's into you, he's going to pursue you. Even if he's a little shy at first and you're the one who initiated it, like saying, hey, we'll go on coffee. You say, I think there's something here. Am I alone in this? Like, oh, no, I really like you too. Okay, now pay attention. If you're still doing all the texting, calling, initiating the dates, then the actions don't line up, So I think that it's okay for you to be verbal and say, I'm interested. You're a grown adult. And I don't think that puts you in a category of like, ooh, she's fast, or ooh, she's thirsty, or, ooh, man, she's wearing the pants or whatever. I think it's okay for you to express yourself, but then pay attention. You don't want to be the pursuer. I think that would indicate for you that maybe the interest is one-sided.
Yeah, that's so good. This next question says, to the guys, how does porn affect dating? Although I would like to say that both men and women do watch porn. This is not just a men issue. So,
Yeah, I'll speak on that in the sense of what you just said. It's across the board. And it gives unfair expectations to other potential girlfriends, boyfriends. At the end of the day, it will rot you spiritually. And it's like a virus that gets on your computer. Like a virus will shut your computer down. And you get that in your system and in your spirit on a regular basis. Now it's also taken away your strength to pursue, because now she's going to say no. You get used to that, and then you recluse to your own vices. So it's out there, it's rampant, it's scary how rampant it is. You can't even get on Twitter without seeing some random pop-up. And it's a constant battle. At the end of the day, it is rotting of your soul. Like, it rots you, and that temporary satisfaction can give you expectations about women and men that will ruin relationships. Just check out some of the Christian YouTubers who are actually anti-porn and really fighting against these, and they're interviewing ex-porn stars. And the stories you hear, you're seeing them in one way, and you're thinking this is what's going on, but they're hurting. They caught all these different diseases. Their lives are ruined. They can't even now go to church because someone in the congregation struggled with it, and they saw them on there, and that's the girl, that's the guy that was on. That kind of stuff is just like, hey, you know what? Take it to God, ask God to repent, and Him change your heart. Not to be in a place where you're like, I'm not gonna ever do it again, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna slip right back up and do it again. It is now a switch of a mentality. I'm gonna pursue you, God. Instead of me saying no to that porn, I'm just running towards God. I'm running towards God. I'm like trying my hardest to spend more time with you. And the more and more that distance starts to grow, the no becomes easier. It's gonna always be there. Don't think the devil's not slick. He will find a way to try to catch you at your weakest. But that will ruin a lot of relationships. Not even just relationships, your own spiritual.
that's so good. And right, it's like it gets us into that consumeristic mindset of what can that person do for me versus seeing that person as a child of God. And I think that's the thing of like, maybe that's that's the thing that you needed to hear tonight. But also too, to say in our monthly the monthly newsletter resources, we'll put some really great apps and resources about that, because that's not a battle that you should fight alone. There's so many resources out there. Actually, and I think this summer we're actually going to bring a speaker who will speak to freedom, and I think it'll be great. So that'll be fun. Another question we have here is, how much should you consider your significant other's family when deciding to take the next step with them?
I love Sam's family. I really do. I mean, it shouldn't be the factor at all. I think, every family has its own story. I think the people that, created your spouse, it's something to thank them for. And like, even if you don't get along with them perfectly, I think, along the way, they raised the person that you're with, or your dating partner or your spouse. And so it should be considered, but I don't think it should really sway your decision. And if anything, it's just an opportunity, I think, to continue to grow your heart and grow in grace and continue to just learn more about someone and who they, created, someone that you really do love. So, family can be tricky. Your own family can be tricky. Your spouse's family can be tricky. But I think, continuing to just have grace for them and continuing to see them also as children of God, and that there might be, they're getting used to their son or daughter dating or marrying, or, in that process. I had past relationships where I had really tricky other, or like, not, they weren't my in-laws, but like my boyfriend's parents. And those were really sometimes hurtful relationships too, because they had opinions about me about different things. So I think just as much grace as you can give, but it shouldn't be like your end-all be-all factor in your decision making.
I also want to add, so for me, I come from a non-Christian family, and so that was for me, when I was dating, that was always a question in the back of my mind of, oh, is this going to be a deal breaker for someone? And that was for me, definitely something that, obviously Merrick has had so much grace with and whatnot, but I think it is a question of yes, every single person has their own shortfallings and brokenness. None of us are exempt from sin, right? And so it's a really big question of as you are approaching engagement of am I called to take on this person's brokenness? Do I feel called to their brokenness, or am I able to be a buffer for my spouse and their family? And that's been really beautiful and redemptive for me in so many ways, where Merrick has been a buffer for me and has actually advocated for my family and allowed me to love them better as a result of just the way that he has been. And so I think that the Lord can use it all, but I think that you really do have to ask yourself how am I going to seek the Lord in this, and is this something that I feel called to step into, right? Because there's no perfect family out there, but I think that's super important.
Can I add something real
Please
quick to
do.
that? I would also say, if there is an unhealthy or a challenging relationship with your significant other's family, really pay attention to how your significant other sets boundaries with them. If they set really healthy boundaries, and for whatever reason, they're gonna stick to them, but that family member is just not respecting those, that's something to be said about your significant other and how they're going to continue that into your marriage and your future relationship. So if your significant other is able to set boundaries and good, healthy boundaries, I think that's a really good telling sign too, that that's gonna be how it progresses into marriage.
Yeah, that's so good. Another question we have is, why are there so many single people in church, but people are afraid to date within their small group, church, etc.?
Can I get this? Please do. You guys know the answer to this. In church, for some reason, there are a lot of weird tactics about dating. You guys mentioned it earlier. If I saw it from my own eyes. If I asked you to go to Starbucks, that girl is thinking, okay, we're gonna have 5 kids, we're gonna get married at this date. No, guys, like I understand you're living for the Lord. You want to be a good Christian. You're still a human being. You don't have to be weird. Have the right people in your life, godly wisdom, great counsel in your life. So if I ask, I'm just gonna get real practical so it makes sense. If I asked Tiffany on a date and I just thought she was good looking and I wanted to take her out, I'm gonna ask my pastors sometimes, if they know them, what do you think if I took her on a date? They're gonna give me insight on that person. But you don't have to do that all the time. It's just like, hey, that's another woman, that's another man that's over there that I'm interested in. Take them on a date and just get to know them like a regular person. I mean, elementary kids do this better than adults in church. It's crazy. I'm watching my 11-year-old daughter and how they can just walk up to anyone, have good relationships, good talks, and conversations, and it's not weird. So I'm just gonna keep saying it over and over. Do not be weird. You guys understand it because, you guys understand it. Because fellas, if you see her and you're interested, go up to her and talk to her. She says, no, I'm not interested, bro. Cool. There's more out there. Okay, ladies, if you're interested and a guy asks you, you can do what Olivia say. You can say yes. But if you know it's a no, sorry. It's not going to happen. And just understand you can take your time. I think the problem is that we get so impatient. This particular season of our lives, we can get so impatient and we're just going to do stuff we wouldn't care so uncharacteristically go about dating, where you just need to just be patient, be okay with being a regular person and just see where it goes. And then take advantage of godly counsel in your church. What is it, connect groups here? What is it? Yeah, groups. Your group leaders. Those people that you trust, talk to them, ask them, and get godly wisdom. And then just don't be weird.
Yeah, alongside that, I think there's maybe this tendency of, let's just say a guy asks a girl out and she ends up saying no. She might have the tendency to go to her friends and, blab about the guy and how awkward or weird that was. It's like, be honoring. like admire that person had the courage to ask you out, and just have respect, because I think that's probably what maybe keeps people from, to answer this question, is of not asking people out, is not just fear of rejection, but fear of that getting around and suddenly I become a person that asks people out and I have this label. And it's let's respect each other a little bit more, There are so many questions on here. We're gonna do 2 more, I think. We're gonna push it a little bit. Are we enjoying this? Okay, cool. I was I figure y'all are enjoying this. I know I am. So another question is, in hindsight, do you wish that you had a longer dating period before getting married?
No.
No.
I don't. Because here's the thing. I think, to go back to one of the other questions, marriage is a choice. This idea of, are they the one? I don't know. At the end of the day, you are making a commitment. They could go crazy. They really could. I married Andy. He could have gone crazy. I don't have a guarantee. Do you understand? I think that sometimes we think with God, there's all these guarantees. There's not. Read your Bible. There's not. The guarantee is that God's with you. The guarantee is God will never leave you nor forsake you. That's the only guarantee you have in life, is that God will never leave you nor forsake you. And if you really are a follower of Christ, there is a guarantee that you will suffer in this life. Those are the only guarantees in the Bible. So I think that this idea of do I wish I would have dated? Why? So I could have found more reasons why I didn't want to make a commitment to this person. Because at the end of the day, I made a commitment, and Andy's not perfect. I'm not perfect. I do things that annoy him. And if we weren't married, he'd be like, yo, this girl, goodbye, But it's you can't say goodbye because we're married, so we're going to work on this. So no, I don't think I think we knew what our core values were. I looked for the attraction, the friendship and the chemistry, and then I made the commitment. And since then that's what we've been doing. And so no, but also this is about your season. It's about your season. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to make a commitment? Are you ready for a life partner? Not in the sense of like, oh yeah, I'm ready. No, you're not. But I mean, in the sense, look at the trajectory of your life. Are you ready in that sense? You know, um, and that to me is, at least I can speak for myself. No, I don't. I didn't need another year, 2 years to figure out if this was the one for me. He is the one. I made the commitment, and we're making the choice every day to say, you're the one for me.
I'll say on the opposite spectrum, where Merrick and I dated 2.5 years by the time that we got married. Granted, our engagement season was 3.5 months. You can ask me about that later. COVID venues. Anyway, so with that being said, like I needed to like work through some like pretty intense healing in that season, and Merrick was patient enough to like walk with me through that season. But for me, like I needed that amount of time to be able to really make sure that I was so sure of making that lifelong commitment. And if I had made it just because I thought, well, other Christians like get engaged under like a year, I should be at this place that I'm not. Like that obviously is a conversation you and your partner will need to have together of like, because like they might not be willing to wait for that. And that's okay. Like that's something that you need to go through. Thankfully, Merrick was able to like be patient with me through that, but like I really needed to walk through healing before I could make that decision. So everyone's different. There's no cookie cutter answer. I think that's important to say. The last thing I'll say, or the last question we have is, how do you know when to say I love you and what should that mean? We'll end on a high lovey-dovey note instead of the breakup note. Yay! Redemption.
I can speak on this. So that's obviously a big thing to say. I think, first off, I want to acknowledge, I think that can mean different things for different people. Like, I remember dating in high school, and I was throwing that around, which means something so different now. So I think first, understand what that means to you before you say it. And when you do say it, explain what that means to you. Does that mean that you have the trust and you have the commitment at that point to say, you're someone I'm committing to in this dating relationship? I am now viewing you as my future spouse. I want to be engaged to you. I'm saying I love you to show you that that's where I'm headed. I think that takes trust, and you have to evaluate where you're at in the relationship. I think that's going to be a different time for everybody. One of my good friends, Spencer Nakamura, he has a podcast that we'll put the resource to. He said that you also need to have good wisdom and discernment in where the other person's at. Just because you're ready to say I love you doesn't mean the other person's ready to receive that. So how long do you wait to say it? What are you looking for in the other person to be like, okay, I think they're ready to receive this. I think you need to be cautious and conscious of where the other person's at too. And I think that then once you say that, I think it can be received a lot better. And that conversation is going to go a lot better too if you just use a little bit of wisdom, and then also know what you're saying when you go into it.
One thing I'll add, sorry I keep adding, but just so good, is Merrick and I had a conversation about how when we decided to say I love you to each other, that we didn't want the other person to respond out of like saying it in the moment. So we both like made that boundary and saying like, hey, like when I do say I love you, like I want you to have your own separate time of saying I love you back, because I want this to like not just be like out of a reaction or like a response. Like I want you to be able to like genuinely say this and have your moment to say this. And honestly, that took so much pressure off, so that when I was the first person to say I love you, I didn't expect him to say it back, because we had established that, and that took the pressure off of him and that kind of thing. And so not that everybody has to do that, obviously, but that was something that really like blessed us. And so yeah.
One more thing I'll add to that is, I know for us, like when we said I love you, we both like did not have that conversation, and we didn't really know what it meant for each other. And I think for you, it was like a little bit more serious at the time than it was for me. But for me, I knew that my love was going to continue to grow. And so I think that's something to also keep in mind is like, this is not going to be like a pinnacle thing where this is the most love you're ever going to have for this person. And then it's all downhill from there. Like, if anything, you're just going to continue to love them more. And it's probably going to look a lot different because you're going to know a lot more about them. You're going to accept them a lot more. You're going to have a lot more grace for them. And that love continues to grow and build. So I would say, as much as you can, also, it's very important. And I want to establish that. But also, that love is going to continue to grow. And it's not going to just be that one moment that's pinnacle.
No, go ahead. Are you sure? I was going to say, too, something that Andy and I have done, I don't even know where it started, but we will just randomly ask each other, what do you love about me? And we, do it so often that our kids do it now, that they'll go, what do you love about me?
Goals.
And so we'll be at the dinner table and one of the kids will be like, let's go around and say what we love about each other, and I'll start. You can start with me, and it's like, okay, all right, you need your love tank filled, we got it. But that's one thing, because I love you is awesome, and it's so great. And I remember I had a teacher in high school who told us once about he had like a friend who wanted, a guy wanted to come and date his daughter or whatever, and he said, oh, I love your daughter, she's this, that, and the other. And the guy said, that's great, now what do you like about her? And he was like, oh, well, I love this, I love her, I love it. And he's like, I don't care about that you love her. I want to know what you like. And so sometimes I think we can make those words, I love you, seem so huge, but then maybe not have the meaning. And so what we do is, we tell each other we love each other all the time, but we spend those times sometimes saying, well, what do you love about me? And it's always fun because then the other person waits and it's like, okay, your turn, and it's like, your turn now, And so, but it just helps bring meaning to what I love you means.
And the only thing I'll add to it is when you say it, just own it. Just own it. Understandable. I think that's amazing what you guys did, where it's like if you say I love you, the person doesn't have to like feel pressure to be like, I love you too, However, if you're there and like, I'm in love with you, voice it, own it. And if the person doesn't say I love you back, don't go cry into the corner like, oh my gosh, she doesn't love me. Oh my, I can't. No, you love her, own it, show it through your actions, and just know that that person may be in a different place, in different seasons. Still show them, wash them with your words, and let that happen naturally. But you owning it will show that person, wow, this person loves me and was willing to step out there and just tell me. And it wasn't set up. It wasn't like purpose. It was like, I know that I am in love with you. And the cool thing about this relationship is our relationship's going to continually grow. And we'll be celebrating our anniversary in April for 14 years. And I can honestly say, I love her more today than I did when I first told her I love her. And next year, I would love her more than I do today. So when I just tell you things, but yeah, just own it, guys.
That's so good. In our resource list, we'll list the book Loveology by John Mark Comer. If you haven't read that, that is just such a great resource on like what love means. And I know for Merrick and I, we referred to that a lot before we like said I love you to each other, of just having these conversations about love. What does that actually mean to us? How have we seen this demonstrated or not demonstrated? And that was a great resource for us. So we'll definitely send that out in the resource list. But our panel was just straight up fire tonight. Thank you so much.